the dunk. Grady dribbles out of traffic. Grady up to
That is the sound of the best bad team in the NBA. The Toronto Raptors only have 7 wins this season, but they have been easily one of the most popular trash teams in the league for sure. The attendance of this team has been fantastic, and there's a lot to be excited for if you're a Raptors fan, considering the amount of raw talent that's on the roster. So let's sort of dive into that raw talent and figure out like exactly what the Raptors are trying to build, because I think frankly this is one of the most bizarre young teams in the NBA. If you guys like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and every subscription, every like, it really counts a lot. So let's just get into it. So the Raptors are really weird because they didn't start the construction of this rebuild by drafting a generational prospect or a lead ball handler necessarily. They don't really have either of those things in spades. They have a couple lead ball handlers, and they have some very good talent, but you look at a team like a Charlotte or a Memphis or a Detroit, these are teams that started by building around point guards. You look at teams like San Antonio or New Orleans, these are teams that started by drafting Zion and Wemby, which made their rebuilds, I think, a lot more streamlined. What the Raptors have sort of done is they've sort of just retooled over and over again after the previous regime trading Pascal Siakam, trading OG Anunoby. They haven't acquired a ton of draft picks, and they've instead like taken on a lot of reclamation projects. RJ Barrett has been the face of that like reclamation model because he was starting to teeter on mediocrity in New York. It wasn't really clear what his role was on that team. RJ Barrett's always been a weird player because we don't really know what his elite NBA skill is. He's got a lot of good skills, and if you look at different seasons from his career, and in certain seasons he's been an improved three-point shooter, in some seasons he's been a very good playmaker, in some seasons he's been a very good defender, but it never really felt like RJ Barrett could put all the skills together and then be an efficient enough inside scorer to make it all really work. But he sort of unlocked all those skills at the same time in Toronto, and he's had a much better season this year. Part of that is probably just because he's home. I think another part of that is just his natural development curve is a little bit longer because he is such a bizarre build of player. We've got some other reclamation projects on this team, Ochai Agbaji or Davion Mitchell, guys who are starting to slip out of the rotation on their teams respectively, and I think Toronto has done a really good job penciling them into specific roles and making their job in the NBA extremely defined. We know that Davion Mitchell isn't like a good shooter. He's not an amazing point guard by any means, but he is a lockdown on-ball defender, and he can make plays, and occasionally he can hit big shots. So I do think there is value to him being on an NBA team. And then Ochai Agbaji has become a very good three-point shooter off the catch this season. He was shooting 41% from three, which has slid significantly during the season. He was shooting like 55% or something for the first like month of the year. It was just fucking ridiculous. But he has been pretty solid for us on both ends of the court, and that's another player who is very effective in transition. When you're building a young team, one of the best things you can do is have a lot of pace if you've got all those young legs on the court. And the Raptors are one of the fastest teams in the NBA. So having guys like that, along with their other young talents to sort of make plays in transition, has been pretty much like the bread and butter of this team's offense. Half-court sets for this team are really disgusting, honestly. There's almost no three-point shooting on the court. They're one of the worst shooting teams in the NBA. And without an amazing pick-and-roll or pick-and-pop center, as well as mediocre playmaking by committee, I think it's really hard for this team to just get consistent, easy offense. They have some guys who can cut at a high level, and they have a lot of physical, big players. You know, Scotty Barnes is 6'9", and he's big as hell. Really long arms, very athletic. RJ Barrett, same deal, very athletic, going downhill. I think RJ Barrett is perhaps the most interesting player on this team because he has been their best player this season, but like weirdly, it doesn't really seem like he's designed to be the best player going forward. He doesn't have enough natural playmaking instinct, I think, to be the lead ball handler, but he also doesn't have enough shooting to be like the secondary option because he's not an amazing catch and shoot player, and that would also sort of be selling him short, forcing him into a catch and shoot role. So it'll be interesting to see how this team sort of pairs him with a lead ball handler and Scotty Barnes going forward. I don't think Scotty Barnes can be the lead ball handler on this team. For a long time, thought he was a point guard. I really did believe that Scotty Barnes was just like a Magic Johnson-esque player, 6'9", can move really fast in transition, and is like an amazing playmaker. I don't think he has enough point guard instincts to be a 1. I really think he is sort of more of like a Draymond Green level player in terms of his passing, which is still very good, especially when you pair it with all his other skills. But in order for those two to be unlocked, you do need a lot more shooting on this team. Again, a lead ball handler would be really nice. Emmanuel Quickley has missed most of the season, which is why I think this team has been such a disaster in terms of the win column. They're very competitive because of their talent advantage, and because everyone on this team seems to be like really good spirited. They seem to have very good chemistry. I think that's one thing that Toronto has always had going for them, is no matter what era of Raptors basketball you look at, you can always sort of root for the players that they have. Masai is very good at drafting like high character guys, and I've been to Raptors games, and I can tell you that the crowd at Raptors games is electric. It's probably one of the best atmospheres in the NBA. But this is just, it's such a weird team because I feel like they have all the pieces except the main guy, but they have a lot of really good players. I don't really see Scotty Barnes being superseded by some players the number 2 option or the number 2 best player next season. Same with RJ Barry. You know, they've sort of got this sort of 1-2 tandem going, and they do have some shooting, which could make this team like really effective with just Emmanuel Quickley at the 1. Emmanuel Quickley is not an amazing volume playmaker, but he is good enough at it, I think, to where he can be this team's number 1 ball handler going forward. I'm not really sure how far Emmanuel Quickley as your starting point guard takes you, but he's certainly being paid like he's good enough to fit that mold. You look at a guy like Grady Dick or Jakob Poeltl. I have really enjoyed the Grady Dick experience this year. He has really improved defensively. That's probably the biggest improvement Grady Dick has made to his game, is this season he has become a much more effective defensive player. He's really tenacious on the ball, in my opinion. And I think he's a very good shooter, but I don't see him as like a Klay Thompson level shooter. I don't really love it when he runs off screens. I think he's too big, and his frame is too awkward for him to be running off screens and immediately shooting threes like a Malik Beasley or a Klay Thompson. I think he is more of like a high volume catch and shoot 3-point shooter who can make difficult attempts very consistently. I think he's got some off the ball ability, but it's very gradual, the development of that. He has sort of been relatively inefficient from 2 this season, but again, he's a player who's really effective in transition. He can really find his way to the rim if there aren't a lot of people in front of him. And then the other like high volume 3-point shooter on this team has been Jakob Poeltl, the rookie out of Baylor. He is a good player as well. I've liked his minutes even though his numbers have been very bad. He is a decent shooter, and he's sort of got this janky off the dribble game. It kind of reminds me of like a Kobe White, the way he puts the ball on the floor. I think he's definitely got something to his game, and I think because he is such a natural scorer, I think he's the type of player that you need to put next to a Scotty Barnes, a guy who's just going to get you a bucket even if the play is broken down. He's an isolation scorer, which this team like really lacks in, just a guy who can reliably score in isolation. RJ has been able to do it at points of this year, but he's not like an amazing isolation scorer. RJ has been very inefficient from mid-range, which is sort of a big gripe on him because he takes a decent amount of mid-range shots. But like for the most part, RJ does get to the rim. He does shoot threes. I don't hate his shot diet. I just wish he would be a little bit more efficient. But that's sort of come along with his career. And then the last piece of this team, which I kind of want to talk about, is Jakob Poeltl. He has been a very good rebounder. He's not a horrible defender. He's not the worst passer in the world, though it's definitely not like a skill you would point to and be like, wow, Jakob Poeltl, great playmaking center. But he's just very mediocre. And the fact that he has absolutely no bag whatsoever, that's normally like a bullshit criticism. Like that's normally like not real. But I think this team could use a center that could maybe stretch it to 3-point land a little bit. Could maybe like initiate DHOs and be a very effective pick and roll player. He's not physical enough to impose his will on a defense. and score at will. He doesn't really have the moves to sort of be given the ball in the post and just go to work. He's just a very like milquetoast center. He's a good rebounder. He's an okay scorer from inside. I think he's just very unremarkable in my opinion. I wish this team had more athleticism from their 5 position. I wish they had a center who was a little bit more versatile. Obviously, those players are hard to come by, but I think that's the type of player they should be targeting in this draft. And I think those sort of players could maybe be available for them, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But you look at the Raptors right now, this has got to be one of the most exciting young teams in the NBA. They have a lot of upside on this roster, and it never seems like the Raptors make bad decisions in terms of the young talent they acquire. They never really draft like busts. They sort of make good moves around the edges, and this has always sort of been the plan with Masai, is to sort of build a team slowly. And I guess what we'll sort of see, I think this team may be looking for a point guard at the draft. They may be looking for a big. It's really sort of 50-50, because I think the wing position, like, they're fine on wings. They do not need more wings, which is kind of unfortunate in the Cooper Flag draft. Yeah, that's really all I got on the Toronto Raptors. If you guys like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Every subscription, every like, it really counts a lot. It really makes a difference. And make sure to go follow all my socials in the description and cue that music.